Hey everybody, welcome to the Radical Center. My name is Jonathan Langley. We are broadcasting as ever from the illustrious Radical Studios in beautiful sunny downtown Austin, Texas. And as you can tell by my heavy Texas accent, I'm an American and I'm an independent. And I should just point out, actually, if Jackie's not here, she says I say that too much. I don't have to say that every time. All right, Jackie, just for you, I won't say it in the future, but I am American. And I'm an independent. All right. I'm joined in the studio today by Dan, our long-suffering producer who, well, if you're listening to us online, makes the mics work. And if you're watching us anywhere, then, well, he makes the lights work and puts up pretty graphics and things. All right. So today, one of the things we wanted to do in the short time frame, we're trying to put these little snippets together, is which actually was suggested to us by a listener, viewer, call him what you may, someone called Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. And that is what's been going on with wealth in America since COVID, really, and the stimulus and all that good stuff. So we thought we'll give it a shot. Now, we've actually spoken before on this program about the fact that 50% of America, more than 50% actually, 52% of Americans don't own anything in the stock market, nothing. So any increase in wealth through the stock market doesn't affect them whatsoever. We've also said previously that most of the wealth in the stock market is owned by a much smaller percentage than you might think of, and we're going to get to that because we have some new updated statistics, and we do like to keep the facts. And the other is that much of this wealth of the stock market, in fact, 30% of it, is owned by people from overseas. So when we talk about the stock market growing and wealth in America and the 1%ers and all this, how has everybody done compared to the average American? And in this case, we're going to say the 50%, the great unwashed, the people who sort of, I don't know, if they were the waterline on a ship, or the tip of the iceberg, they would be the great unwashed. They would be below the ocean, right? They would be below the ocean. You don't see them, but they're there, and they're poor, so maybe we just don't. They vote, and that's all we care about. We just, the great unwashed. It's not our fault that they didn't go to college and get a degree from Harvard and work at Wall Street Journal or Fox News. No. Everybody has the same opportunity in America. So how has wealth done in America in the last 18 months, COVID and Trump's tax cuts and Biden and all this sort of thing. All right, Dan, put up the first graphic, and I'll describe it, of course, if you're listening online. Thank you very much. All right. So back in, this goes back to 2010, and the change in net worth. Now, if you're watching us online, you can see it, but I'm going to describe it for everybody else who's listening. So 0 is the starting point, right? That's the zero-sum game back in 2010 is the starting point. We're looking at change in net worth from 2010. So for the bottom 50% of Americans, as a whole, combined, since right up to date, right up to here to mid-2021, their actual 50% of the people have received $700 billion extra in wealth creation, right? That's how much their net worth has changed. You might be going, well, Langley, that's fantastic. $700 billion. Well, considering that's amongst 50% of the population, how does that compare to the top 1%? Well, it can't be that far off, Langley, can it? Really, come on. 50% got $700 billion. I know the top 1% do very well for themselves, so equal $700 billion, but just for 1%? No, you'd be way off. Put it back up, Dan. $11 trillion. That's right, kids. The net wealth increase for the top 1% since 2010, in other words, since the Great Recession, was $11 trillion. So much more than 10 times the amount of the bottom 50%. In other words, the average wealthy person in the top 1% has done incredibly well. Thank you very much. $11 trillion versus the bottom 50% who got $700 billion. And where does all this wealth come from? Why did this happen? So clearly, GDP has grown right? So therefore, if GDP grows, people's wealth grows. But remember, we went through the Great Recession, the GDP went down. We've now had COVID. This is right up to date. This is including COVID, right? This is including 2020. In fact, including the first 6 months of 2021. So where has all this massive increase in wealth come from? What could possibly have driven it? All right, Dan, put up the next one. So this is share of net worth for the bottom 50% and the bottom and the top 1%. So this is not just the increase. This is the share of net worth. So the top 1%, and if you look at the right of the screen, I'll describe it online. If you look at the right of the screen, since the Great Recession, 2009 to 2010, the top 1% share of the net worth in the United States, and we've talked about this before, is now 33%. 33%. And the bottom 50%, well, we don't care about them. It's basically less than 4%. So the bottom 50% have less of a share of net worth than not even, I would actually say it's 1/10 the bottom 50% of the top 1%. But what I really want you to focus if looking at it on the screen is the top 1% have actually increased since 2010 from a share of about looks like 28% to now 34%. In other words, their share has increased dramatically, and it's all driven by, put up the next one, Dan, yes, of course, stocks and shares. Yes, stocks and shares have actually increased since, again, we're going to look at 2010, by 2,000%, excuse me, it's increased by 2,000% since 1990, but since 2010, it's actually increased by 1,500%, which makes sense, right, if you think about it, because when you think about where the stock market was back in the day in 2010 and where it is today at about 35,000. But here's the problem. If you're an average working stiff, like I said, 52% of Americans don't own anything in the stock market. We've actually said this 2 or 3 times on this program. My conservative friends have said, well, you're a socialist. You're not taking... First of all, I am an independent. So the fact that they get upset at me is just that they don't like facts. But the fact is, if you own anything in the stock market, you're doing very well, hopefully. But the average investment in the stock market is less than $1,000. So yet again, the people who own wealth in the stock market have done very well. Thank you very much. Everybody else just sort of looks at it and goes, well, I'm glad Fox News and Fox Business Channel and CNBC and all these others show that little bubble of where the stock market's going. It doesn't affect me, the 50% who don't own anything in the stock market. And by the way, just to be clear, they don't own anything in the stock market anywhere, not even a 401k. They don't own it. They don't have it. So put up the next one. So how has this affected the top 1%? Holy frigging cow. So to describe it, so the increase for the top 1% just since COVID at the end of 2009 is over 1,500%. 1,500% increase in the amount of shares, amount of value of their holdings. For the bottom 50%, it's gone up, but their share of it is less than, well, it's like 20% of the value compared to the top 1%. So again, the reason we got this massive increase in wealth in this country is because so many people with money have invested in the stock market, and it increases the value of their holdings exponentially. And yet again, like I'm going to say it one more time, 52% of Americans don't own anything in the stock market. Now, the other one, put it up, Dan, is home prices. Home prices, as we all know here in 2021, are going absolutely crazy. And if you look at how it's benefiting the rich disproportionately, there's actually increased their wealth since 2009 by close to 200%, just in housing. Actually, more than 200%, 300% just in housing, whereas the bottom 50% is essentially, looks like it, if I just go by the numbers since 2009, 2010, it's up by roughly, looks like 20%. So in other words, if you're well off in America and you own property, and especially more than one home, right? Maybe you have some investment property and you have money in the stock market, you have done exponentially very well. No wonder their share of the stock market, put the other one back up, their share of the value of GDP, the dollar change in their net worth, I should say, has gone in 2009 is increased by $11 trillion. 11 trillion, whereas the bottom 50% have to share 700 billion. And just to remind everybody, when people say, well, the rich pay more than their fair share of the taxes, and everybody else is basically should be grateful that the rich are paying this amount, as I said before, it's because their share of the wealth is huge. Of course they're paying more. They're paying more because they earn disproportionately that much more. And if this doesn't freak you out about what your neighbor might have to put up with to afford to send his kids to school or pay in medical care, whatever it might be, this should be a wake-up call of how disproportionately the wealth is flowing to the extreme top of the American society. All right, you may disagree with me. Please write to me, jonathanlangley.media. Give us some ideas, like other people have, right, for the show, of topics for us to talk about. Tell us if we're wrong. Like, comment, subscribe. We can take it. We don't get upset like Shallow Hal, Sean Hannity, or Bowtie Boy Tucker Carlson. If we're wrong, we will say it. And I do get people writing to us all the time at jonathan@langley.media telling us we're wrong. It happens quite a lot, actually. But the trouble is telling us we're wrong and then factually proving it. For some people, Adam, I'm looking at you. Which camera? Adam, yes, I'm looking at you. Are, well, just telling me I'm an idiot doesn't prove that I'm wrong. Okay, by the way, I have plenty of people that will agree with you on that one. All right, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. God bless, and we'll be back very, very soon.